President Trump says that starting this morning, the United States will begin what he calls a humanitarian effort to guide stranded ships through the Strait of Hormuz. In a lengthy social media post yesterday, the president wrote that, quote, countries from all over the world have asked the U.S. if we could help free up their ships. Trump offered few details about how the process, which he dubbed Project Freedom, is actually going to work, but he warned that interference will be dealt with forcefully. U.S. Central Command added that the operation will include guided missile destroyers, more than 100 land and sea-based aircraft, and 15,000 service members. The Wall Street Journal cites 2 U.S. officials who say the plan is effectively a coordination cell to move traffic through the strait, involving countries, insurance companies, and shipping organizations, adding it doesn't currently involve U.S. Navy warships escorting vessels through the strait. Iran is responding, though, to the president's plan this morning, with a top official warning that interference in the waterway would be seen as a ceasefire violation, and the country's military saying U.S. forces will be attacked if they enter the oil choke point. Now, as this standoff over the strait intensifies, 2 ships were targeted there in the past 24 hours, according to a British maritime agency. The president's push to clear the key waterway comes as gas prices continue to rise, hitting an average yesterday of $4.45. It also comes as negotiations appear to remain at an impasse, with the 2 countries trading peace proposals, but no agreements so far. And amid the ongoing stalemate in the strait and the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports, the White House is arguing that hostilities with Iran have, quote, terminated. That assertion comes as lawmakers from both sides of the aisle put pressure on the administration to seek congressional authorization for the conflict that has now stretched past the 60-day mark when it is required by the War Powers Act for a president to do so. In a letter to congressional leaders on Friday, the day that the 60-day countdown expired, President Trump claimed the ceasefire actually had paused the clock, writing, quote, the hostilities that began on February 28th, 2026 have terminated. Terminated, they're paused. What? Also, doesn't it not stop the clock? He went on to say that the threat posed by Iran to the U.S. and its military, quote, remains significant, but that he will, quote, continue to direct U.S. armed forces consistent with my responsibilities and pursuant to my congressional authority to conduct U.S. foreign relations as president and commander-in-chief. It's a lot for us to unpack on this Monday morning. National security reporter for the Wall Street Journal, Alex Ward, thankfully is here with me. So we'll get to the 60-day clock in a moment because I'm confused. But let's just start with the Strait of Hormuz and the way that the president is announcing this operation. What is it? What isn't it? Set us straight here a bit.
Think of it as like one really big group text for the Strait of Hormuz.
Great.
Right? So it will be using U.S. intelligence, information from other countries, shipping organizations, and general awareness of where the shipping lanes are open. And that coordination cell will tell tankers, you know, this lane is open. There are no mines there. Or we've seen no IRGC, Navy activity. And maybe it's possible U.S. ships will kind of go through certain shipping lanes to prove the concept that lane is open, and that will give tankers and other ships confidence that they can leave. The main goal is to get U.S. flagged ships out of the strait, although this will also affect other countries. A note about, and understandably, people are going, but CENTCOM is saying all these troops and all these assets.
Yeah.
That's roughly how much the U.S. already has in the region right now.
So it's not just directed for this.
Correct. The CENTCOM is basically saying, hey, we're ready in case stuff goes down. And there's a warning to the Iranians, please don't mess with this event or this coordination cell, otherwise things may get rowdier. So there's no question that this could eventually, down the line, or perhaps soon enough, lead to direct military escorts of these ships, depending on the situation. But for right now, it's basically, hey, you guys that are stuck here, here's the safest and best possible way out if you take it.
I think the bigger question, too, is for an administration that's trying to say things here are terminated, they're at least on pause, does this risk making things worse, making things rowdier?
It depends. That's really up to Iran at this point, right? If Iran, which they've said, we might come after you, if they actually are going to do that, then that would require perhaps some sort of U.S. defensive response, and then you get into those concerns about an escalation tit-for-tat cycle. But for now, again, the kind of main goal is to clear up that potential space. Shippers go through. The Strait of Hormuz is less blockaded than it was. The main blockade remains the U.S. on Iran, on ships going to and from its ports. Yeah. And the Iranian blockade of the strait kind of starts to get loosened because of this coordination cell. There's no question, though, that, these kinds of things can escalate if things go badly. So there's no risk here, but this initial move, and if it is not as risky as it could be.
Okay, that I think helps people who are looking at this and saying, is this a big deal, small deal? It just kind of is what it is at this point. I think the other piece of it, too, is as they're trading peace proposals, which nothing has been agreed to at this point, there's this question on Capitol Hill of, does the clock just pause because you've put a ceasefire in place? And I think that's the question that we're grappling with going forward as the president tries to say that war powers is not a thing when, in fact, it very much is. And Congress is trying to reassert its congressional authority.
You don't just get to call timeout on a war.
Exactly.
There's no chess clock you can sort of press. I mean, the way this works is it is 60 days from when hostilities begin, and hostilities have not ended.
Correct.
I mean, one thing we should note is even though there is a ceasefire, there is still a blockade, and a blockade is an act of war. There's a reason President John F. Kennedy called it a quarantine of Cuba, not a blockade of Cuba, because he wanted to avoid those war concerns. So this is still continuing today. This blockade, it is still a war. And President Trump, kind of went against his own letter because that night, just hours after the letter went to Congress, he told a group of supporters, we are at war with Iran. So the U.S. remains at war with Iran. The real issue here is that Congress isn't going to do anything about it. The president knows that, and this administration knows that. So why not make this rhetorical case and avoid a big hoopla, but knowing that they're going to face no repercussions? It
is a real put up or shut up moment because there were several Republicans, especially on the Senate side, who I spoke to in real time during the first week of this war. And they said, well, if we get to 60 days and they still haven't come to us and it's still going on, then we should have a different conversation. OK, now's the time to maybe have the different conversation. We'll ultimately see what those folks say as this conflict continues to stretch on. The other thing that has Congress talking, though, is the U.S. set to withdraw thousands of troops from Germany over the next 6 to 12 months. The Pentagon initially announced plans to pull about 5,000 troops, but President Trump said on Saturday the reduction will actually go, in his words, a lot further. The decision follows tensions with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who recently criticized U.S. strategy in Iran. Defense officials say the withdrawal comes after a thorough review of U.S. military needs in Europe. Germany currently hosts key U.S. operations, including major air bases, command centers, and medical facilities. Republican Senator Roger Wicker and Congressman Mike Rogers, chairs of the Senate and House Armed Services Committees, respectively, released a joint statement on Saturday warning that this move could send the wrong signal to Russia, undermine deterrence, and expose U.S. allies. Europe, meanwhile, continues to rally around Ukraine amid absence of the United States. Today, the capital of Armenia is hosting the 8th summit of the European political community. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is there, meeting with officials on the heels of the $105 billion loan approved for his country by the EU. The United Kingdom is preparing to enter talks on joining that loan program for Ukraine. Today at the summit, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is expected to address the conference. He's going to be the first leader of a non-European country to do so. So I think as we're watching Iran, and certainly the president announcing this troop pullout from Germany is after Merz criticized Iran for basically embarrassing the U.S. at the table, is effectively what he said. Ukraine also remains a key sticking point for European allies looking over to the U.S. and seeing an absence of leadership. It's something former Vice President Mike Pence made very clear to me that he sees this gap that the U.S. under the Trump administration is providing. And yet it's notable that you see this rare rebuke from Republicans leading armed services saying, I'm pretty worried about what pulling these troops out of Germany will be. What are the conversations you're having with your sources?
Yeah, so we should know that this was attempted already in the first Trump term, and Congress effectively blocked the reduction of troops from Germany. In this case, I mean, we should be clear, a 5,000 troop reduction of Germany is not a major operational impact, right? It will have some impact, but it's not going to completely change the U.S. relationship with Germany or the U.S. military relationship.
It's more the fact that they would do it at all.
Right. And actually, oddly enough, there is this weird moment where these troops could actually end up going further east in Europe, maybe Romania or the Baltics, in which case probably Russia's not going to like that. So Trump may have stumbled into a oddly enough, a more deterrent position with Russia. But regardless, say they come back to the U.S. What this really does is a signal of where the U.S. and Europe currently are, right? The fact that this meeting is happening in Armenia and the U.S., which is a Russian treaty ally, is quite the slap in the face to the Russians. And the fact that the U.S. isn't doing that, has even sent a political signal, shows where that situation is. And now you've got this moment where, I mean, I was at the NATO summit last year with President Trump, and it seemed like he had turned some sort of corner on the alliance. He clearly is not. He has returned to the mean. NATO is bad. They didn't do, in his words, they didn't help him in this Iran operation. And now allies are basically going, okay, this anger is not subsiding. There's clearly a rift in the U.S.-Europe relationship. Europe is now going to have to step up and do more, which the U.S. wanted, but you don't necessarily, you want Europe to kind of bend a little bit, not have a relationship break.
Yeah, and I think that that has been one of the key concerns from more conservative wings of the Republican Party, that they're watching these alliances that were bedrock principles for U.S. diplomacy now at least be called into question, if not be bent, and we'll see ultimately if they are broken. National security reporter for the Wall Street Journal, Alex Ward, covering it all for us. Thank you. It's great to see you.